Hey guys, I got a question that I wanted to briefly talk about today. And it's something that comes up quite a bit, and it has to do with having a young kid who's really struggling with this and siding with the other parent. This email came from a gentleman who has two kids, an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old. I mean, a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. And the 13-year-old's doing pretty good, right? Gets along with dad, no problems, everything's fine. But the 10-year-old, on the other hand, is really having a tough time. And person's struggling because they don't know what to do, right? They strongly suspect, and probably rightfully so, that their ex is doing things to create problems. He also said in the email that he recently went back to court to get more time, and prior to this, his 10-year-old was doing fine. And this brought me back to a very similar situation that happened with me. When we first started out, I was seeing the kids every other weekend, had a couple of dinner visits, those were taken away, because that was all, that weekend visit and every other weekend was something that we had agreed to, but it didn't have a binding agreement. So as is typical in these situations, the ex unilaterally decided that, dinner visits were killing the kids and couldn't do it anymore. That's beside the point. The point is that for a little bit of time, we had 70-30, because when we first went to court, the temporary orders, I got a little bit more time. And then ultimately, 6 or 7 months later, it switched to 50-50. Now, when that happened, the first thing that I had to deal with was the kids being upset, the kids being frustrated about the change. And I remember having a conversation with my youngest at the time, which probably was, what was she, 7? Because my middle daughter was 10. My oldest son was 12, if I remember the ages right. But bottom line is, the kids were all freaked out that mommy had less time. Mommy had less time. You have more time now, Daddy. Mommy has less time. It's not fair. And I remember thinking, what the hell are you talking about? It's not fair. Now it's fair. This is whenever it switched to 50-50. And the kids were really upset. I mean, they were like, no, this isn't right. And they were, the Groundhog Day, which is, if you guys, I haven't talked about this in a while, but in my older videos, I used to talk about this a lot. The Groundhog Day is whenever the kids come back and everything reverts back, and any progress that you may have previously made is poof, gone. And you start over from scratch, or so it feels that way. Problem is oftentimes whenever you feel that way, your anxiety and frustration levels skyrocket, and as a result, we tend to make a few mistakes. So hopefully that is not what's happening with you, but if it is, it's relatively, I don't know if common is the right word, but I'll just say common. So then this gets back into what I wanted to hit with the 10-year-old that this other person was writing about. The first thing we have to remember is our kids are completely freaked out about this, and their entire world has been just completely thrown upside down. So they don't know what to believe, they don't know what's true. All they know is the stability that they thought they had, even if it wasn't good, is now gone. So they don't know who they can trust. Parent has left. Does that mean that parent's going to leave them? They don't know. So they're really freaked out. The second part about this is oftentimes a toxic narcissistic ex will use shame, guilt, fear, all those different emotions to control their children. I know it sounds horrible, and you would think that a parent would never do such a thing to their child, but unfortunately, they do. I can also talk about that from my personal experience because that's exactly what my mom did to me. She laid on the guilt, she would cry, she would make me feel responsible for her, and I felt like I had to be there for my mom. Not the other way around, but that I couldn't leave her and I had to make sure that she was okay. And I was doing that at a 10-year-old, 11-year-old age myself. So here's the thing. You have to be really cognizant of what's going on with this so you don't get caught up in that trap. And what I mean is that you can sit there and react, get irritated, and not realize where your kid's coming from and make a lot of mistakes. I did that. Trust me, I know. It wasn't a lot of fun. Not my more shining moments, so to speak. Let me see if I can get my lighting a little bit better. So what you got to do is, one, you need time with your kids. You have to be able to interact with them. You have to be able to have some one-on-one alone time with them so that you can actually make them feel safe, make them feel secure, that you are going to be there, that you love them, that you're not judging them, and help them out. Now, going back to that other scenario, what I was talking about, what I had to do to get my kids to convince that it was fair is I sat down with a calendar, right? Now, I'm not sure if this person's situation was like, the weekend dad and then he had 50-50 or maybe he got more or whatever. If you're in a situation where your kids are feeling this way and you do have 50-50, what I would recommend, pull out a calendar, mark down the days that you have them, mark down the days that the other parent has them, and show the kids that it's not more time, it's equal time. It's not that, yes, mommy has you less now, but it's now even. Daddy barely got to see you, that type of thing. Sometimes you have to really do that with the kids to really break through that programming and that manipulation that they're going through. The second thing is, and I know I haven't talked about this in a while, and if I could find some of my older videos where I talked about this, I'll put them in the link below, or maybe I'll even add them in a card above. But take the transition day with a grain of salt. When the kids come over and they're upset, just let it go. Let them have a pass for that transition time, because they're really stressed, they're really frustrated, and oftentimes they act out in ways that aren't really that great, and you can feel like you need to lash out at them. Please, for the love of God, do not do that. I made that mistake myself, and what I can tell you is on those transition days where like I had the kids for the 5-day period, if I did that, the entire 5-day period would be a disaster. If I let the first day go, and the second day generally things calmed down, and by the third day things were fine, and then the rest of the 2 days were great, then things got better. As soon as I started to do that, that Groundhog Day started to subside and started to get better. Now, one of the other things that this person had mentioned in the email is that even though the custody has changed, their youngest, their 10-year-old doesn't want to come over. And obviously in this scenario, the other parent is not pushing it. It's like, well, little Susie, if you don't want to go, you don't have to, which is bull. Push for the visitation. If you have visitation, you need to exercise that visitation. Unless you've tried and you've done it for a few months and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and if your child is, tearing things up and it's just turning into a nightmare, and you've tried all the techniques I'm talking about, then you got to reconsider what you really want to do, okay? But exercise the visitation. Push it. What I recommended in the email I sent back to this person is you might even want to say, hey, honey, this is a new visitation. We don't want mommy, in this particular situation, we don't want mommy to get in trouble by not exercising the visitation. It really puts her at rest because she's violating this order. So I know it's tough for you, but let's just do what the order says. We don't want mommy to get in trouble. You can talk to her on the phone, or you can FaceTime with her if you want to do that. You may, that's kind of a caveat. But make your child understand that it's non-negotiable. Now, I did that early on in my thing, and I wasn't Zen master mode that I am now, and it was more aggressive. Basically, I think in my mind, not in my mind, but what I had told the kids at that period of time is, this is the custody. If it's changing, we are going to frickin' war. And I just made it clear that it was going to be a drag out, knockdown, drag out, things weren't changing. Because I knew at the time the ex was trying to play on my oldest to get him to convince to say that he wanted to live with her full time. Knew that was happening. I heard it from other people. It is what it is. I have to admit, my ex, super damn covert. Honestly, she is amazing at how she can subtly do things to where it absolutely looks like she's incepting the idea into the kid's head. I've had so many conversations over the last 8 years with the kids where I'm too blunt, so it makes me look like the bad guy, and she's able to covertly, oh, it's so sad, honey, or I know you don't really like being around your father, that type of thing, to really push it. And it's really, really tough not to take the bait, and it's really tough when you're dealing with somebody who doesn't have an emotional, really, attachment to this, so that's easy for them to play the game, because they're not having that an emotional attachment, unless they go through rage, and that's a different story. So here's the thing. If you're in this situation, one, if you have time, exercise the time with your kids as much as possible. You want to have one-on-one time with your child so that you can determine, so you can ascertain what the relationship really is. Don't judge the relationship on how the child reacts when they're not around you, like if they're not answering your text, or they're not calling you, or they're not answering you, or whatever. The other thing is, do not gauge it on transition day. Do not gauge it on those first few hours of that first day where you get your kid back. Now, if the rest of the time you have with your child is a complete and total utter nightmare, okay, that's a different story. Most stories, what I hear from people is that, when this comes up, they will say, oh, well, yeah, once the kid's with me for a day or two, everything's fine. Everything goes back to normal. They are affectionate. They love me. They whatever. That's reality. That is what's really happening. Focus in on that. Everything else is just really stress created by the other situation and the other parent, and it's that transition from that. Now, we would all hope that the other parent would turn around and talk the kids up and try to make them feel comfortable, but that's not what these people do. They want that emotional reaction from their child. They want them to be all upset and be like, I'm gonna miss you, mommy, forever. That type of thing. That's normal. That's exactly what they want, and because it makes them feel good, it gives them supply. They're not worried about how their child feels, because somebody who was worried about how their child feels would be saying, hey honey, it's no big deal, you're gonna have a great time with your dad, I'll see you tomorrow, I'll see you in 3 days, I'll see you whatever the time frame is, have a good time, tell me about it when you get back, right? But that's not what these people do. These people are gonna tie in with that emotion, and the child is gonna feel like, oh crap, if I don't get upset, if I don't show the other parent that I really love them and I really don't love the other parent, then I'm gonna get punished, or they're gonna, or mommy or daddy's gonna be upset or sad, and I'm trying to validate their feelings. The other little caveat on this story that the person mentioned is that they have a new girlfriend. Personally, I would recommend you keep any new relationship away from your kids for an extended period of time until you know that new relationship is going to be rock solid. So don't move in with them really quick and stuff like that. You don't wanna do that. The other caveat with that is what can happen is your child can think, oh, okay, well, in this scenario, daddy has somebody new. So daddy's taken care of. So, mommy's alone. Mommy has nobody. When I'm not here, mommy's, freaking out because she's by herself. So I need to rally with mommy because daddy's okay. That happens a lot too. So just be cognizant of that, and just understand where your kids are coming from and how hard this is for them, and take a breath. Take a deep breath, try not to react to the situation, which, God, I know it's really tough to do, and just work on building that relationship with your kids. So I know there's a few people going through this. I hope that's helpful. If you have some other things that you've been able to do to address some of these issues, please leave them in the comments below. If you're new to this channel and you have not subscribed and you think this content would be helpful, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification, because that actually helps YouTube think that people like the channel. All right, so I'm out of here. Anyways, hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully this is something that could be useful. Man, it's starting to get hot out here. I know it's that time of year, but God, I like it nicer whenever it's a little bit cooler. Winds always blows out here anyways, there's no way around that. Anyways, hopefully you're doing okay, and hopefully you're seeing some positive influence with your kids and you're making some progress with them. Man, this is tough. Hang in there. This gets better. Don't take the bait. And yeah, I'll chat with you later. Take care. Bye.